Hi, everybody. Imagine a modern company like Apple Incorporated being magically transported back in time into the 18th century and being given a charter, a royal license by the British Crown, basically to run a country as it sees fit and even invade other countries. It's kind of hard to imagine, right? But something similar happened to the Philippines in 1762. Stick around, let me tell you all about it.
An incorporation invade the country, like perhaps if a modern day company was hypothetically transported back in time and given a royal charter by the British monarch during the Age of Empire. Can it participate in an invasion and have a license to rule a country? Well, in the 18th century, something akin happened to Spanish Philippines. Most people associate colonial invasions with kings, governments, and navies. But in 1762, the Philippines faced something different. A military invasion led by British forces, including the British East India Company, acting under the authority of the British Crown. This is the forgotten story of how one of the most powerful companies in history briefly conquered Manila with a private army driven by profit, not patriotism. The British East India Company was no ordinary business. By the mid-1700s, the company commanded a large private army in India, rivaling those of many European states. In the Manila expedition, company troops joined regular British Army and Royal Navy forces. Funded by private investors and answerable to shareholders, but influenced by the British Crown via royal charters, the company didn't just trade, it conquered. The Seven Years' War was the first truly global conflict. Britain fought against France and Spain across Europe, North America, and Asia. With Spain allied to France, British strategists with the involvement of the East India Company saw an opportunity. Seizing Manila could open Asian trade routes and bring vast wealth. In late September 1762, a British fleet composed of Royal Navy and East India Company troops arrived and besieged Manila. The city fell on October 6 after a short but intense siege. The occupation began with a brutal sack of the city by British troops, including those of the East India Company, who looted for over a day and demanded a large ransom from the Spanish authorities. But running a colony proved harder than capturing it. The company lacked support from the British government for long-term occupation. Resistance from Filipino and Spanish forces in the countryside made control very difficult. So for 18 months, Manila was administered by East India Company officials under British authority, collecting tribute and managing trade. However, British control never extended far beyond Manila and Cavite, as Spanish and Filipino resistance remained strong. The Treaty of Paris in 1763 required Britain to return Manila to Spain. British forces withdrew in early 1764, ending the brief occupation. Despite their success on the battlefield, neither the British Crown nor the company saw value in holding on to the Philippines. The war was over, and profit was no longer guaranteed. Legacy and lessons. This forgotten episode reveals the dark side of corporate power in the Age of Empire. The British East India Company wasn't just a corporation, it was a political and military force. It reminds us that colonialism wasn't always about flags and anthems. Sometimes it was about dividends, trade routes, and the ruthless logic of profit. So here's a good point of comparison between Spanish rule and British rule under the East India Company. In terms of governance, the Philippines was ruled under the Spanish Crown as part of the Viceroyalty of New Spain, while Manila and Cavite were technically under corporate control under the East India Company per se, just like India at the time. And the primary focus of Spain was really evangelization. For Britain, it was obviously economic profits, since things were being run by a for-profit corporation. So in some social media platforms, some Filipinos have expressed the opinion that the Philippines would have been better off under British rule. They might not know the facts on the ground, however, that had British rule continued, the Philippines would have most likely been under the East India Company, which only relinquished control to the British Crown in 1858. Hong Kong was directly under the Crown in 1848 and was never subject to the East India Company. So technically, if you're going to compare colonizers and their work, we should compare India and the Philippines, and not the Philippines with other British colonies, especially mainly white settlements like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Don't do that. Not even Hong Kong and parts of Malaya. As we showed in our previous video, by 1900, the Philippines was ahead of its Asian peers in terms of GDP per capita. So by virtue of that, we here in Los Filipinos express the view that we were better off with Spain than with the British East India Company. We're also missing the point if we just focus on who's running us compared to how we were run. As we explained in our previous video, the Philippines had the nearest thing to independence by the 19th century, trading with the British, the Chinese, and the Americans, and of course Spain. And all of that caused economic growth in the country. So kindly visit that if you haven't seen that yet. So we were actually already benefiting economically in the 19th century without having to be a colony of Britain, who saw the Philippines as an economic colony anyway. Anyway, so for a brief period from 1762 to 1764, a corporation, acting with the British state, helped govern a conquered colonial capital. And I think we should be glad that both Spaniards and Filipinos fought this British invasion from spreading. Imagine being run by a for-profit joint stock corporation under the aegis of the British Crown. Sounds scary for me. I wonder how Apple might have fared if they were running the show.
I've seen in other social media platforms some discussions that talk about maybe we were better off with the British. However, not a lot of them realize that the British that came here were actually not just the crown guys, but corporate guys, the East India Company. Okay, so that's all that we have for now. Please like and subscribe to continue supporting our channel. Viva los Filipinos! Mabuhay!